Coaching Soccer Weekly, episode 369. The Outliers in Youth Soccer, Exploring the Secrets of Success. Entertaining, educational, and inspiring soccer content to help make you a more effective coach, player, or soccer parent. Hello and welcome back to Coaching Soccer Weekly, presented by World Class Coaching. My name is Egor Rabinovich, and this is the podcast devoted to bringing you cutting-edge methods, techniques, and tactics for coaching soccer. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced coach who has been training teams for many years, or if you're new to coaching and working with a team for the very first time. There's something we can all do to take our coaching to the next level. Welcome back to the show. We had one game this weekend. It was on a Sunday, so this was actually the first time in a long time that I had Saturdays off. What's going to be interesting in the summer is that all our games are on Saturdays. So I'm going to have a lot of my Sundays off. And that's something that hasn't happened in a long time. We used to be training on Sundays. So now we just train during the week. And Sundays are going to be off for me unless we have tournaments. I think we have 5 or 6 tournaments with our 2010 team. But other than that, it'll be nice to actually have a day off during the weekend. So it'll be interesting getting used to that. But yeah, that's super exciting. This past weekend, we just had our last game of the season. That was our 2011-2012 team, and that's them playing in a U12 league. Now, we were playing what historically was a really good academy. And when I say good, I mean that in the sense of they pass the ball really well. They score goals, and that's it. From a 1v1 point of view, there was nothing. Players standing out, not really. But historically, they do well against us, really, really well. And we had half of our team that was actually 2012 players. So half were 2011s, half were 2012s. And we had, how many was it? We had 2 new players on there. 2 players that are going to be starting really with their outdoor team. But I just kind of wanted to give them one game before we get into our tournament this weekend. So our 2012s, we have 2 new players there. And, they struggled, but it was a really good introduction for them. One of them played defense and, really struggled. But I think it was good to start playing a year up just to kind of get the jitters out of the way. And when I say that, it's more for my relationship with him as he plays. The idea is to understand that when you make a mistake in the game, you're not going to get yelled at by the coach. And he made a lot of mistakes. And again, we didn't yell at him. We would take him off every 5 minutes, have a, 2-second conversation. Here's what I'm looking for the next time you go on. And that was it. A big shout out to our sponsor this week, VO, once again. As I'm sure you knew that was coming. VO is a really great tool that we use every Monday, and we used it yesterday as well. My favorite thing about it is the ability to watch the whole field at one time. So I can go in, which is what I did yesterday, and focus on defending. We really focused on team defending. So what I didn't really care about was the opposing player with the ball. I wanted everyone else, which is usually off camera with, if you're taking a video with your iPhone or someone's taking a video of the game. The thing that I wanted to focus on was actually off camera. So what's really great about VO is that you can actually see the whole field and pan the whole field so that you don't have to follow the ball. The camera does follow the ball, but there's a way to do it that you can watch everything else. And that's what we did. And we really broke down when they counterattacked us, and it just seemed like we weren't really focused on the player that they were supposed to mark. So with VO, I was able to pan away from the ball. So for example, when the goalkeeper had it on the opposing team and they were trying to build out at the back, what does our defensive line look like? Is my center defender taking charge and letting my left and right defender, because we play a 3-back, know where they have to be? So those are some of the things that we were able to focus on in our VO meetings. If you're looking for VO, we have $200 off. So go for it if that's something you're interested in. It really does help, I think. But if you're getting the VO, use it. Use it because it's such a powerful tool. The link for that, it's a link, it's not a code. That's in the show notes. So you can find that. And if you can't find it, send me an email and I'll be happy to send you the link as well. So that was really the weekend, right? Just really great. I think we played well. We ended up losing 2-1, but I thought we really started to do what we wanted and what we've been practicing on defense in the game, and really starting to do it more in that second half. So we spoke about it before the game. Make sure you have your player. And then in that second half, we really emphasize the fact that we're not pressing. I don't want to press. If we're playing 3 against 1 and my forward is just running, that didn't really make a lot of sense. So we don't really want to press with our forward when the goalkeeper has it. We want to retreat because there's a retreat line, and then we want to hold. And once the wide defenders get the ball, that's when we start to press. So that's really what we were emphasizing in the halftime talk. And again, that made a really big difference. And we're slowly building our defensive structure. And what's great about it is it's 2 teams doing it at once. It's our 2011s and our 2012s. So when we go outdoors, both of those teams are really going to be in a situation where they've already been through that. And we're going to see that this weekend, hopefully. Our 2011s are playing next week. Our 2012s, 2013s, and our 2014s, they have what we call a festival this weekend, which I'm really excited about. It's not something that I've done since before COVID, so it'll be really nice. And then next week is going to be our first tournament, again, before COVID. So really excited. On Saturday, the U9s and 10s are playing, and then on Sunday is the U11s, which is that 2012 team. So we'll see what happens, but super excited for that weekend. Speaking of excited, a really exciting announcement on the Facebook group, Coaching Soccer Weekly. We've passed 300. We absolutely obliterated that. Yesterday, I think it was, we got to 300, and then now we're already at 310. So at the time of recording. So if you want to, get into that group, all you have to do is just Facebook, Coaching Soccer Weekly, and that's it. Again, that's something that it's mostly for the coaches. I just act as the admin for that group. Sometimes I'll weigh in, sometimes I'll say something, but most of the time I let you guys talk to each other, create connections and things like that. So really great opportunity if that's something that you're interested in. I'm really excited for today's topic simply because I love audiobooks. I talked about this last time. I'm almost done. It's called The Outliers, which is a book by Malcolm Gladwell. And I just love that time in the car to the point where there are days where I find excuses to drive places, which is so weird because I'm in the car so much, but I just love the audiobooks. The Outliers is a really great book. It was recommended to me by someone that I know, someone that I respect. And I was like, you know what? Let's listen to it. I'm in the car anyway. I have an extra credit this week. So I started listening to it and it was really good. So today I'm going to talk about it. And in The Outliers, it's really just a fascinating insight into the secrets of successful people. So outliers are really people that stand out. And in this book, Malcolm Gladwell talks about a lot of different people in a lot of different industries and how they stand out. What is it about them? In the way that he starts the book is he actually gives a soccer example. And I'm going to start with that as well. And we're going to get into a lot of different stuff, really 3 different stuff, but I'm going to talk for a while, probably. And yeah, so let's get into it. In the book, when it starts out, one of the things that he spoke about was hockey and soccer. And this is in the 90s and 2000s. I did a little bit of research and things changed a little bit, but for the most part, it's true in youth soccer. What he talks about is the month that the players were born. So what ended up happening, and he did research into the Canadian Hockey Federation, and he found the juniors, some junior teams and examples with that, and then he also did European soccer as well. And what he found was January, February, March birthdays. Those were the majority of players in the European leagues. Now, for soccer, it's not as true anymore in Europe because there are clubs that are taking steps to negate that, but not so much in youth soccer in North America. So we're going to talk about really why that happens and how to avoid it, and really how to avoid that trap. I think it is really a tough thing for youth soccer. So let's talk about why this happens, right? January, February, March. Youth soccer, and even when I went to Chelsea, starts off at under 9, right? So for us, we start at 5, 6 years old. And if you think about a January player, a 2016 or 2017 player right now, and you think about a December player, there's almost 12 months in difference between these two players. And the younger you are, the more that has an impact on your physiology and your psychology. So there are times where you get a 6-year-old, a January 6-year-old, and he is bigger, stronger, faster. And then you get a 6-year-old who was born in December and they're small, not really coordinated as much because they're essentially 5. But because of the way that we have to put players in, right? And that is, September, by years, right? December, January. So that's how we have to group them. So we are forced to put a December player and a January player and look at them in what's supposed to be an equal opportunity, right? Okay, they're trying out, they're here. Let's just see who's the best. But it's obvious that the player who's had 12 more months on Earth is going to be better than the one that is younger. It's just, it makes more sense. They've had more practice, right? So that's really a big trap. Now, it's not a big deal at the early ages because you can see that the gap isn't that big. So let's say I've got Johnny. Johnny's January, he's big, strong, fast. And then I've got Eric, right? Eric is, just turned 6. He's a December baby. He comes in and, he's not great. He's not big. He's nothing special. So what do we say? Okay, Johnny, you're going to actually go and you're going to play in a rep program, right? And the other player, you can be here in this development area, right? In our house league program. You're not good enough yet to be in our rep program. So the discrepancy between those two, because they've never played on an organized team, is very low, the difference between them. But there's still a big difference, right? The size. Next year comes, and we do a big pool again. Both players are there, for a tryout, because again, we go big tryout every year, right? That's what all youth clubs do, a big tryout with everyone. And what do you see? Well, Johnny, who played in that rep program, he's had a full year of 3 times a week coaching with licensed coaches. You had the other player, I think his name was Derek, I forgot. Derek, who played house league. So what's house league normally? House league is normally once a week you go, you play, right? There are some places that also add a practice, but that's pretty much it. So if you think about the total hours for that kid, Johnny versus Derek, Johnny had 3 times a week practice plus a game. That's 4 hours in a week, right? Which is 16 hours. Or you know what? Let's make it 3 hours, right? Because I don't really count the game because they both had that game. So 3 hours. While Derek only had 1 hour of practice. And it may not even have been with a licensed coach. Usually house league is run by the parents. So let's give the extra 2 hours just to be safe. In an extra month every month, that's 8 extra hours of training with a high level coach. So every single month, Johnny gets 8 extra hours, better coaching, better players around him. So next year, they both come into the same environment, right? Big pool of players. Who is going to perform better? Without a doubt, it's Johnny. So while Johnny had this little advantage of being born in January that first year, that whole year carried him and got him so much more training. And now he's back in, but he is 10 times better than the younger player. And that's the problem. And that's why by the time professional, college, whatever that next step is, the gap ends up being so much bigger because of what initially started out in such a small difference. But by the time they're 10, 11, 12, maybe even 15 years old, that physical gap, that speed gap isn't there anymore. Now it's just the skills. And yes, Johnny is 10 times better skillfully. But why is that? Well, because he had better training at the youngest ages. That gave him that advantage to next year go back into the rep program. And Derek didn't, right? He had a full year once a week, house league, barely got any touches on the ball, right? Who knows what the parent coach did? How is Derek ever going to compete and catch up to Johnny? It doesn't make sense that he would. And that's the big problem in youth soccer, right? And it's still something that exists everywhere here. So how do we negate that? Right? Well, I'll tell you what we do within our academy. So within the academy, we put players together by skill level. And all of our coaches coach every age group. So we have a 2012 that comes in, never played soccer before. We're going to put them in the beginner session. Now, that beginner session might have 2015s, 2014s, 2013s. It'll have a variety of players. But what's going to be great for that player is that we are really going to have the same coaches in every single age group. There is no under 10 coach. There is no under 9 coach. Everyone coaches together. So what that does, that automatically tells the player that they are going to get the exact same level of training as everyone else. So that's check mark 1, right? That was one problem. 2, the number of times a week. Well, for us, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what team you play for, we give parents the option of how many times a week they want their child to practice. So if you're brand new and you want to catch up, we say the best thing to do to catch up is 3 times a week, right? Because that's what the older players do. That's what the players on the team do. So if you want to get there, you at least have to be where they're at now. And then sometimes we'll even give them 2 hours, right? So they'll actually get 6 hours, right? So they'll come, instead of just 5 to 6, they'll come 5 to 7 on the 3 days. So they're actually getting a lot more training and they're starting to catch up because they're already behind. The idea here is flexibility and equal opportunity. And that's what we're offering, right? So let's get every single player the same level of training. Let's give them as many hours as they want, right? And let's not make it so that they get cut if they're not good enough. So what does that mean? That means that every single player, and I mean every single player that wants to come into our academy, we will take them. And we will make sure that they're in a situation where if they want to get more training, if they want to get high level training, which is everything, that's why we're calling it an elite development academy, every single player, even our 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, they will get training from our high level coaches and they will be able to train 3 times a week if they want. Now we have to talk about the next part of that equation, right? How do we give our players more of an advantage than everyone else, right? How do we create a situation where it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from? What we're looking at is really, how can we make this player fantastic, no matter who they are? And to that, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule. And what he said, and I'm sure most of you have heard about this, is that in order to master a skill, you have to have at least 10,000 hours of it. Fair enough. Now, that's a little bit misleading, because 10,000 hours at one place is going to be different than 10,000 hours somewhere else. And here's why. What we always say is that we have a low player to ball ratio. So let's take an average 10-minute session, right? So from an hour, let's just take 10 minutes of it. The question is, in that 10 minutes, every single 10-minute block, how many times does a player touch the ball? And in most places, it'll probably be about 30 at the most, I would say. A lot of teams, they do line drills, have to, from that 5 minutes, from that 10 minutes, 3 of those minutes, the player is standing in a line. Maybe another 2 minutes because, they're playing 5v5, right? So there's one ball, there's 10 players. So how many times are you really touching that ball? For us, first 20 minutes, always one ball to one player ratio. So we're already increasing the number of touches on the ball. So they're getting extra practice. So even the players that come once a week, and this is what we see, and they come from other clubs and they want to train with us, even within our first 20 minutes, they're getting more touches on the ball than they would in their whole entire session. And on top of that, the next 20 minutes, which is 1v1s, they're getting even more because it's one ball between 2 players. And then we go 20 more minutes, and now it's 2v2 max, right? By this time, we've already done a full hour, and these players have touched the ball 4, 5, 6 times more than the average player in their area. So the question is, how are they going to catch up? Well, this is how. And what we've had is players come to us, they've trained with us once a week, and they're still playing with their other team, and they start seeing improvements, even though they just come to us once a week. And the parents go, wow, I don't know what's going on. And then we explain to them, 10,000 hours, but if 5,000 of those hours are you watching someone else play, or 2,000 of those hours, right? Talked about maybe 3,000, because 3% of that 3 minutes of the 10 minutes, right? So at 3 minutes of you standing in a line out of those 10 minutes, that's equivalent to 10,000 minus 3,000 hours. Then you add maybe another minus 2,000 for the small-sided game of 5v5 with one ball, right? Now you're at 5 hours, 5,000 hours. So training for 10,000 hours doesn't mean anything if you're not training in the right environment. And that's the difference, right? When Malcolm Gladwell talks about Bill Gates, he talks about the fact that he had an advantage. Bill Gates' advantage was that he was in the right situation where he was offered time on a computer where in the rest of the world, it just wasn't common. His high school, right? They were one of the only high schools to have a computer back then. Then there was a situation where there was a college close to him that he was able to get unlimited hours of computer time, right? These are all situations that created who Bill Gates was because of the environment. You look at everyone else in his school, if they didn't join the computer club, right? What does it matter if they're in the right situation if they're not taking advantage of it? And that's what we have. We have clubs that run 4 hours a week of training So the players theoretically are in the right environment, right? There's 4 hours. Well, oh my goodness, 4 hours. That's a lot of time of training. But if those 4 hours aren't utilized well, that's like, again, Bill Gates' classmates who didn't end up joining the club. The computer was there. If you're not going to use it, though, it's not going to help you. If you're not going to use the ball, if you're going to get players in lines with 4 or 5 in each line, you could train 10 hours, it wouldn't matter. You can't catch up to a player who's even there twice a week and getting 5, 6, 7 times more touches. It just doesn't work out. I recently watched an interview with Freddie Adu. When I was growing up, Freddie Adu was everything, right? He was drafted into the MLS at 15 years old. And to me, that was really the point where I was like, I don't think I'm going pro. The fact that I wasn't even close to getting drafted, that was really it for me, that moment. And the question is always, whatever happened to him? And the answer is nothing. He bounced around from club to club and never really made it to what his potential was. The kid had natural talent. How do we know that? He got drafted at 15. He signed with DC United. But why is it that he didn't, with natural talent, do well? And then others who eventually did get drafted, maybe later on when they were 17, 18, did, and ended up playing for their national teams or ended up going to Europe. And what Malcolm Gladwell says is that talent can only take you so far. It's the hard work behind it and the opportunities that you get and what you do with them that really get you to where you become an outlier. So let's take Johnny and Derek, for example. Okay. Let's say Johnny, again, January, Derek, December. That first year, January, Johnny goes to the rep team. Johnny has a terrible attitude, though. He doesn't really care about training. He doesn't care about soccer. He doesn't even want to be there half the time. Half the time, he's not paying attention. He fakes injuries so that he can sit off. He's yelling at other players, so the coach has to sit him off for a couple of minutes here and there. And then you got Derek. Derek loves soccer. He's so passionate about it. His parents are in the middle class, so they could actually afford to get a private tutor to come in and work with him one-on-one. Now, Johnny, that whole year, pretty much wastes it, even though he's got all this talent. Derek, who doesn't have talent yet, natural talent, he works hard, right? He shows up to training, pays attention, even if the coach is a parent coach or anything like that. He does then tutor sessions, right? He goes 1 hour, then he loves it. He goes 2 hours every week. And now he's starting to catch up. And then they both come back into that same environment. Who's going to do well? Who's going to make that rep team? Well, now we have a competition, right? Talent against hard work. And it's only when you can combine those two to create an environment where teaches talent, teaches hard work, that you're going to get a combination of those players. So imagine a Johnny that comes in big, strong, fast, January birthday, but you create that environment for him that gets him to work hard, to love to play. That's a star. And then you got Derek who comes in, and instead of sending them to a parent coach in a house league program, you do the same thing with Derek. Now you've got a player that in 2-3 years is going to catch up to Johnny, right? He's so passionate. If he shows up, he'll fight every single practice. He may not be as good as Johnny yet, but he's going to come 3 times a week every single year. He's put in the same session as Johnny because of how hard he works. And slowly and surely the speed catches up. The physicality catches up. And because they're doing the exact same thing with the exact same coach, maybe on different hours, but it's the same thing with the same coach, Derek at a certain point is going to hit a threshold where he's just too good for that earlier session, and now we push him up. And the earlier session, he wasn't there because he wasn't good enough yet. He was there just because physically he couldn't necessarily compete. But that's okay because he's still getting the same education, right? He's still working just as hard. Instead of getting pushed down every single second, which is what happens with our, smaller players, he's just in a little bit of a different session. But what do? We give him 2 extra hours now, right? Because we see he wants to catch up. We see how hard he works. So that first session, he absolutely kills it every time. That second session struggles. But he's getting 6 hours now of quality training. And every year, he starts to struggle less and less with the older group. The opportunity that's in front of you, the environment that you create as a coach is so unbelievably important. And it doesn't matter where the player starts. It should be up to you to catch them up. And there should be no excuses. Now, forget the soccer part of it. Let's think of it from a business point of view because it makes so much more sense. You have 2 players. One player, Johnny, 3 times a week, 1 game. So he pays way more than Derek, who only comes once a week with a parent coach and a house league program. In fact, Derek barely pays for that program, right? Instead, from a business point of view, you get Derek and Johnny paying the exact same amount. More profit for the business itself. And on top of that, you're also creating 2 great players that are going to be within your program. And what does that do? Well, now Derek loves your program. Johnny loves your program. And they started at 5 years old. They're going to be there until 18. In the other example where he's doing house league, the parents see, well, we were there for a year. I didn't really get any improvement from the club. I had to go out and find a tutor for my son. I'm not going to keep him in a program that doesn't do that. So what ends up happening? The club loses the player and he goes somewhere else. The business hat is very important. That's how you build a program. You have to build it the right way. And if you don't, then we start to see the crying and the whining. And here's the crying and the whining. Well, this club is stealing our players. Are they? My definition of stealing a player is when a coach goes up to them and contacts the parent. That's it. If a player leaves your program and goes somewhere else, that's not stealing a player. That's you not doing your job. And that's the difference. So I believe that every single player that comes into the program, if they want it, they should be able to get the best education possible. And we have players that come once a week. We have players that come twice a week. We have players that come 3 times a week. We have players that do 3 times a week. They do our online session. Plus, they have a game, right? But that's up to the parents. And even the ones that come once a week, we do our very, very best to give them the best education. And that's the difference. That's the difference between a program like just a regular club that hires parents and an elite development academy. And what frustrates me the most is the lack of understanding of everything that we've spoken about and the constant complaining, right? The academies are stealing our players. The academies aren't stealing the players. The academies care, and the parents see that the academies care. And that's why they're moving there. Now, I just want to make it clear before people come from my head. In Canada, the way we define an academy is a private business, right? It's my business. A club is a non-for-profit. So it makes sense, just like in the real world as well, that if I own my own business, I'm going to care so much more because it is everything than maybe a non-for-profit who has to go through a technical director. Then from the technical director, they have to go to the board of directors, right? Then the board of directors have to have a meeting and this and that. For me, I want someone that can make a decision right away, and that's what I can offer. And that's the difference. Now, having said that, the power is in your court as a coach. It's up to you to keep your players. It's up to you to teach the parents what your philosophy is and why you're doing what you're doing. It's up to you to talk about the 10,000 hour rule. The fact that you have low player to ball ratio. Everything that you do that is different, that is going to take into account their child. They don't care about anything else. You talk about winning, losing, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If I'm a parent, I care about my child. That's it. If my child isn't playing, I'm not going to be happy. If my child is struggling, I'm not going to be happy. Player-centered approach. That's it. Using the Outliers book, it's very, very evident why the 1v1s and the 2v2s should be done at every single practice, at least one of those for 20 minutes. And before that, we have 20 minutes of deceptive dribbling where we go into the specific details of each move. If you're a parent coming into this program and you see the detail, you see the number of touches, you see the player with the ball the whole time, I don't need to sell the program. Program sells itself. We create outliers. That's the secret of success in youth sports. Thanks for listening to another episode of Coaching Soccer Weekly. One of my favorite things is being in the car and just listening to audiobooks or podcasts. It's really great to continue to learn and get better and just try and think of new approaches to things. This weekend we have our festival. We're going outdoors for the first time, so hopefully the weather holds up. Our U9s, U10s, and U11s each have 2 games in our festivals. So super excited for that, and I will keep you posted next week on what happened. So until then, enjoy the journey, enjoy the moments, but most importantly, enjoy the game.
Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and you can check out more of our videos right here. And if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and the subscribe button.